Welcome to season 3 of Stage Dive. My name is Jack Dawkins. I am your host. I am the one running this crazy show that we have. And before we get into the season, it feels appropriate to say that when I started this whole journey, my idea was that as I was getting ready to start performing on stage, I wanted to talk to the people who had already done it. I wanted to talk to experts and other performers and get their insights and the way that they rehearse and how they engage with an audience, et cetera, et cetera. But what I quickly learned in interviewing all these wonderful people is that more artists just need their stories to be told. Because so often there's a question, how do you push through the sticky bits of going from zero to performer, or going from having trained and rehearsed your whole life to becoming a performer who's on stage and actually making any money doing this crazy shit? And so that's where the focus has really shifted. And season 3 in particular is where we really start to step into that. So if you want to know more about performance and performing, you can still get that here. But more importantly, there's so much more humanity in these episodes. There's a much bigger focus on who these people are, where they come from, what their stories are. And that makes me so happy. My guest for today is Mia Gentile. And this episode is such a wonderful example of how I love that I don't come in with questions, because it allows the conversation to go in directions that we never quite expect. And in the case of today's episode, we wound so much into personal development, personal discovery, what it means to really learn more about who you are as a human being and what you need to feel safe and seen and okay. And yes, for me, a part of that is performing, but there is a much deeper exploration that has gone on between her and medicine and hospitals and etc. It's a really beautiful conversation. We decided in the episode there has to be a part 2 because there's so much we left uncovered. But I'd love to share this first part of it with you to get you started. So here's my conversation with Mia. So before we press record, you were explaining that it's your Monday and that you're kind of getting ready to go into your week, even though like in the calendar it is a Friday.
Yes.
What do your Fridays look like? Because I assume it is not what the Friday looks like for someone who works 9 to 5 and then goes to happy hour.
100%. So wait, are we not recording yet?
Oh no, sorry. We're recording.
We're in.
Yes, we're in.
We're
live. We're in the Matrix.
This is
doing
it.
Yes.
This is real life. Okay, so I guess it depends. Like when I was on a Broadway schedule, Fridays, I mean, again, it's just think about if your normal 9 to 5 and just flip it. Basically, my working hours on a Broadway schedule as a performer, actor, singer, dancer would be nights, weekends, holidays, like all the time that you'd be enjoying time with your family, like I'd be on stage.
Right.
But, and so usually that would be like heading into sometimes a 5-show weekend, depending on the schedule. And we have 8 shows a week. So it would be Saturday would be 2 shows, and Sunday, if you're on the princess schedule, like the good schedule where you have the Monday off, you'd have a show Friday, 2 shows Saturday, and a matinee at 3 on Sunday. That's like kind of the nice schedule. But sometimes you have a show Friday, 2 shows Saturday, 2 shows Sunday. And when I was in Kinky Boots, there was a few times where the schedule was that into a Monday and a Tuesday show. So it was like kind of wild. 5-show weekends are brutal. Much love to all the people on Broadway right now, like kicking ass, doing 8 shows a week. Having taken time away from that just with the pandemic and the flow of life, I'm kind of looking back at that 8-show schedule and being like, oh, wow, that's such a grind. It's such a grind.
Yeah.
So right now I'm in like freelance world. So I teach voice. So sometimes I'll come I live in Staten Island now with my partner and his amazing 8-year-old daughter. And so I have a little bit more of like a domestic-ish life. Staten Island's a cool borough because it's like half suburb, half city vibe.
Yes.
And so I'll go into Manhattan sometimes to teach on Fridays. Thursdays I play in the Broadway softball league still, which when I was in Kinky Boots, I was playing on the Kinky Bats team. And now I play on, we love a pun. And now I play on Team Equity, which is the Actors Union. So I play on that team. It's in like the 3rd division, which is, I was a little intimidated at first, but they're all very, very sweet. And so that's
Can we
yesterday.
Pause for a second?
Sure.
There's a whole Broadway softball league, and there are divisions within the Broadway softball league.
Yes.
Did I hear that
right? Well, The divisions are basically just time blocks. Like the shows,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
and I'm no expert, but I was on Kinky Bats for like 4 or 5 seasons, um, or all the seasons that we played. I mean, we were open for 6 years, and I was in the show for like almost 5 of those years. So it was an early
Mm,
replacement. And so we were in the 11:30 division, which is the first game of the day. This is all on Thursdays in Central Park, Heckscher Ball Fields, and anyone can come by and watch and sit in the stands. Bring your dog, bring your babies. Um, so 11:30 is like the shows that are newer, for the most part, and then 1:30 is more of the shows that are long running because the crew also plays, and that's part of
oh
the
my gosh.
beautiful part of it is that working at the Hirschfeld Theater for that long, you get to know like the front of house people, like
For sure.
everyone of the team, the collective that makes that show run. And so it's not just actors playing softball, and often it's a lot of the crew people because actors, I mean, sometimes we'd have to leave early for understudy rehearsal, and those of us that were covering roles as well. So then 1:30 is the shows that have been around a little longer. Like those crews will stay even if actors come and go. Like the Book of Mormon, Phantom actually before it closed was in the 11:30. But anyways, and the 3:30 they get like a little more intense.
Okay.
Like I mean I don't want to make any judgments, but like skill level wise, it just gets more like hardcore as the times go later just because the players are more experienced, like they've been doing this, like there's a couple of players on our team um, that have done this for over 10 years that have been like playing softball. And again, it's just for fun. It's super, super like I love team equity so much. I'm having a blast playing for them. Everyone is so incredibly sweet. So, and playing on the 11:30 was cool too because you have so like when Hamilton opened, like they had a team and it's very New York City. There's 5 fields, 5 or 6 fields, all kind of in this same area, and you're kind of like coming up on each other. So when I was in the outfield, the outfielders from the other game, we'd
Mm,
be facing each other. And I'd be like talking to the actors from Hamilton, being like, "Hey, I saw your show, great show! Like, how's so and so who I went to school with who's in the cast?" Or like I'd see Aaron Tveit like in the outfield, and I'd be like totally geeking out, like musical theater fangirl, and like be like, "Great catch!" It's just like a bizarre world. There needs to be some kind of like show about Broadway softball.
not that I am like some expert on Broadway. I'm shocked I've never heard anything about that existing ever, ever, ever. That's
There's Broadway
fascinating.
bowling. I mean, yeah, there's actually other like performing arts leagues, which I only found out more recently. There's all kinds of leagues that are connected to people's work and stuff. And again, the division that I play in now, there's like the ticket takers union. There's, people that are in the theater world that aren't connected to a specific show in the 3:30
Right.
games.
Right. I'm curious, and like you don't have to be a historian. Did that start because like the actors wanted to have an outlet because like as part of like Broadway's like where I'm just so
I
curious
wish
like
I
because it's a
knew.
beautiful idea, but like from where did it come?
Honestly, I wish I knew. There's like a website that shows you the schedule and they have like the rules because it's slow pitch, underhand.
Hmm.
And there's certain rules that don't apply to normal like baseball or even softball of like you don't bunt, you don't steal bases. Um, you have to have like you can't have like a certain quality of bat just because the fields are overlapping. So even
Sure.
yesterday, there were like kids playing in another league, and we have some real power hitters, and we're like, please don't kill the children in the neighboring
Yeah.
field. Like, that's a thing. My friend Justin Colombo is actually a sports writer, and he was in Kinky Boots, so he's brilliant, and I love him. He would play, and he hit a home run and actually clocked somebody in the head in the neighboring field. And like, oftentimes, it's so New York City. Oftentimes, like the game where like our ball will go into another field, that game will have to like time out to pause
Right.
because there's another
Right.
live ball in another person's game. It's just insane.
That's amazing. Oh
But
my
I have no
God.
idea how it started. But it's been around for a very long time, much longer than I've
Yeah.
had the privilege of being a part of it.
Yeah. 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 Oh my God, that's so amazing. Um, let's go back a little bit. So you mentioned like I went to school with someone, so clearly like theater was within your sort of vantage point for a long time. Like if you can reach back, when did sort of like the it may have been the theater bug, it may have been a different bug, but where did you and your journey as an artist kind of start?
Okay, this is a good question. I also realized that I didn't close your loop on the whole, what does my week look like now? Just to
Mm.
close the loop on that, today is my day that I'm preparing a bunch of material to sing in a wedding band that I love singing with. If you're looking for a wedding band, they're called One Love, and they're supremely excellent. They're supremely excellent to work for. Our band managers are just like really beautiful people, and we're like a little family.
Mm.
And the musicians and the singers are just like beyond. It's like it's humbling and it's an absolute treat. So I'm going into back-to-back wedding gigs this weekend, which was like a
Wow.
learning curve. And I'll go back to weave it back into my story of like starting in theater, but also in music in different ways. Um, yeah, it's a learning curve going from like singing concert work, singing shows like a musical, to singing weddings where, the couple, they're going to pick like special requests, like first dance, sometimes parent dances. So some of those we have to learn new stuff
Yep.
like weekly. But when I first got into it a few years ago, it was just like, it was a steep learning curve just from the sheer amount of material that you have to know. And we have
Mm.
three singers in our band. And when you're not singing the lead, you're singing backups. It's like all hands on deck all the time, like dance sets, like it's like basically prepare to be like up on your feet for 5 hours, like rocking it, with the exception of the dinner sets where we like take a quick break and eat and take shifts so that we're still playing during the dinner sets.
Wow.
And the dinner sets are more chill though. People aren't like really like raging.
Getting
They're
after
eating,
it.
they're
Yeah.
talking to each other, and we're singing jazz. We're singing like sort of softer jams.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our moment to like take a breath. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, so tomorrow I'm actually doing a wedding in the city and Sunday in Philly. So it's a lot of
Wow.
traveling as well. So it can be,
Yeah.
it takes me like a few days to kind of recover from that. And then my
I'm
teaching
sure.
schedule is sort of sporadic as well, based on like my regular students and when I'm going into the city and teaching versus when I'm teaching on Zoom, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Um, and so
And so,
you wear so many of the hats, but where did it start?
oh my gosh, I'm almost daunted by that question because I know I can talk. And as my partner likes to say lovingly, like I talk in circles. Like I'll follow like thematic threads, but I will go on a million tangents. So, I got bit by the bug, like theater music bug, very early. I attribute that to my grandfather on my mom's side, Grandpa Ted. Um, he was really kind of like just sort of a straight up genius, like spoke multiple languages, was like translating German in World War II kind of guy, but also like played, like his family was very musical. So we had a keyboard and we would like play in the basement on the white carpet and like just make up stuff and like laugh, and it'd be so dramatic and use all the different like weird sounds on the keyboard and like make ourselves laugh. And then my grandma Anne on my dad's side, this is actually her ring. So
Oh
there's
wow.
some stones missing, but these are the birthstones of like the grandchildren. So
Oh my gosh, cool.
that's me. Wait, there we are. I'm the emerald. I'm a May baby. So Grandma Annie like sat me on her lap and we watched Singing in the Rain when I was like, 5 maybe, and
Okay.
like Gene Kelly, first major celebrity crush. Ooh, it's thundering out. And I started imitating Debbie Reynolds, being like, "Good morning, good morning," and I like in my head I sounded like a fully grown woman singing, but in the tapes I was like, I sound just like her. Like I have a voice. And I was like, "Mommy, get me voice lessons." Um, and like cut to the like cassette tapes of like the videos they took, and I was like a little chipmunk
Yeah.
version. um but I started taking voice lessons technically when I was 6, although as a voice teacher now I can appreciate that the woman that my mother found, this wonderful woman named Riza, she would teach me like 30 minutes of like piano and then 30 minutes of like singing songs, but like not heavy on the technique, just because your little instrument doesn't actually stop growing until your 30s. Your voice is
Mm.
constantly growing and changing. And it obviously changes when you get older too, but it's still developing. And then I started taking voice lessons. We moved to Connecticut. We lived in Rye, New York,
Okay.
and then we moved to Connecticut. And I was just incredibly lucky because we moved to a full-on arts town. Like it was like going to performing arts schools, but also like getting a great like what do you call it? Public school education.
Yeah.
Um, so I was taking voice lessons with a guy named Kevin Connors who runs a theater in Westport. Well, actually, I think they're in Norwalk now, but in Connecticut, Fairfield County, still runs it. They have like a children's theater too, kind of. So it's like I was taking private lessons with him starting at age 9 and then doing the musicals. And I had done like ballet, dance, like when I was really young as well, tap, recitals, little like drama camp type stuff. So I'd always kind of been doing it and loving it. Um, and was lucky to have just so much support and amazing arts education growing up.
Mm.
And then I got to high school. There's this incredible theater group at my high school. I went to Staples High School, and there's this group called Staples Players, still run by David Roth, who is our drama teacher, director of the shows, the plays, the musicals. And he taught us, like, I mean, we took like 4 years of acting. We took a directing class. Like I directed a play in high school. Like we were like really deep in it, and a lot of us are still pursuing theater professionally and doing it, which
Wow.
is really, really a testament to good arts education, you know. Um, and so I, I was also like a hardcore perfectionist, type A, overachieving Hermione Granger type.
Mm.
And so there was there was a part of me that was like listening to my dad being like, you need a backup plan, you need to get a real education in college, you know. And then also he would flip back and forth because then he would see me like play the lead in something, some show. Even in high school, we'd be winning like New England awards for like the shows we would do in high school. And he'd be like, you have to do this. You have to do this for your life. So I had like full support of my parents, but also in the beginning, like with a grain of salt. Because even the theater teachers that I grew up with as a kid would be like, their best advice was like, if you can do anything else with your life, do it. Because it's like
Mm.
not an easy life. Um, and so I was planning to like only apply to, this is like so privilegey sounding, like super like Ivy League type like schools, but that had good theater programs.
Yeah.
And I was like set on not going to a conservatory. And my drama teacher, David Roth, Mr. Roth, so we're still calling him Mr. Roth, David, he was like, sat me down. I was like, what are you doing? You're not auditioning for theater programs? Like, Mia, you
Right.
have to just try it. Like, you just have to try it.
Yeah.
You know, you can always go back to academia, you can always go back and try something else, but theater is a little bit harder to just start back up. I mean, and I personally feel like you can start at any time. Like, I just want to say to anyone out there who thinks they're too old, to this, to that, like it's never
Right.
too late to begin. But I think as a young person, like striking while the iron is hot is definitely to your advantage while your skills are on the razor's edge, you know, all that good stuff. Um, but again, that's not a one size fits all. Like some people need to grow into their type. Like I have friends that I went to conservatory with that are like character actors. So it really served them to stay non-union so that they could play roles that were a little older, that they were a little young for, but that were more
Mm.
charactery roles, so that they could get all those roles under their belt and still work professionally. Whereas in the union, it's like a much bigger pond and you're a much smaller fish, and you might have to wait longer to play those roles that are like really sweet spot for you. So I ended up auditioning for like, after that conversation, a bunch of different musical theater programs. Whoa, did you see that lightning? It's crazy.
I hear
Um,
it.
and I ended up going to CCM, which is the Cincinnati, it's within the University of Cincinnati, but it's called the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. And I got a BFA in musical theater. It was like musical theater, like boot camp.
Yeah.
It was pretty hardcore. It's actually like the first musical theater program that ever it's like old guard, and still considered kind of like one of the like more competitive, like, I don't know, I don't want to like, also there's many amazing programs out there and it has to be the right fit for you. But it's
For
like sort
sure.
of that like top three, like, the the whole like reputation was that it was a Shark Tank, and I was like, I don't know, I'll put it on my list, but I don't know. And the school that I really wanted to go to, which was another like top three, University of Michigan, I ended up getting like a bloody nose in the audition, like while I'm saying my monologue, and it was just like this whole mess. And didn't get
Oh
in.
no.
Um, and um, yeah, I got into CCM. I kind of credit my love of Stevie Wonder and the genius of the man himself to getting me into that school, because I just sort of went in, did the dance combo, then took a nap, and then warmed up my voice to do like the singing and the monologuing and all that. And I was listening to, I guess it was like maybe an album, but Don't You Worry About a Thing came on, and I just like really felt that. Like I really felt like he was singing directly to me. It was just like,
Hmm.
hey mama, like, hey little mama, it's gonna be okay. Like, don't you worry about it. Do your thing. And I just like went in there and felt like not attached to the outcomes, just like let's have an experience, let's have a good time. And I got in, and that's where I went. And the other thing growing up that was like really formative, other than theater, for me as an artist and a musician, musical person, was I fell into a gospel choir in middle school. And this gospel choir director who was the composer of the songs that we sang, played the piano, was like the director of the choir. He really took me under his wing. His name's Chris Coogan. And we were in the Good News Gospel Choir, which still exists. And he's like big in the music scene in Connecticut and elsewhere still. And he like truly like took me under his wing and taught me how to play within music in a more improvisational nature, and in a way that like, because of the nature of it, like I grew up Quaker. I wasn't ever like, we were Catholic, and then we found this Quaker meeting, and it was much more spiritual and much more like anti-dogmatic. So I wasn't Christian doing this, but I still felt like I could translate in my head, like I'm singing for something greater than myself, for the
Hmm.
sake of these people who are coming to this church to get like their spiritual nourishment for the week, essentially. So in high school, I was like gigging as a worship leader in Baptist churches. And I would be really nervous with my dad driving me up. I was like so young. Um, I'd be like, oh my God, because there's the structure of it is like, it's all music. The service is pretty much all music with like a sermon in the middle. And
Hmm.
then, but within each song, it was like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, key change, vamp. And once you started to see vamp, like on the lyric sheet or whatever, that's when like you don't know, like you just have to go with it. Like you just have to completely surrender and like let whatever comes through your mouth, like notes, lyrics, like words, it has like just let something greater than you just do it. Like just let it take over, because it's not about you ultimately.
I'm thinking about your mushroom tea, that potion that you brewed for me. You're saying it will set me free and ease my troubled mind. I'm wary of your mushroom tea, that psilocybin recipe. What kind of vision will I see if I should drink your mushroom tea so fine? Will it make me woozy or make me feel a floozy?
So that was amazing. Also, I grew up playing tenor sax in the jazz band in middle school and marching band, all that stuff. And I was obsessed with jazz, that I just kind of found on my own. It's not like it was even being played in the house, growing up too much. And I did grow up in the age of like pirating, like LimeWire and Napster. So I could start to seek out these things myself, jazz, soul, R&B. But the love of jazz, like really, really influenced me, even like a lot of crossover, even in theater, like when I was playing Sally Bowles, um, playing like a romantic lead character, and I'd be like listening to this jazz and just falling in love with jazz and like listening to the music backstage. And I still make like playlists for roles that I do, and we'll listen to them like between scenes or as I'm like getting ready for the show. So jazz was big, and I sang in the jazz band in high school, and we went around and did these competitions, and I like sang a solo song, and this one guy was like coaching me and was like, hey, like you got to be like Ella Fitzgerald. It's like Ella and Stevie are like my two biggest inspirations musically.
North stars
And
of sorts.
yes, because I feel like they're both true channels. Like, so the thing that you'll notice about both of them, and this is what this guy said in the competition as he was coaching me, he's like, we're going to do this song 4 times over, and I don't want you to do it the same way once. I want you to find like the truth of it in each moment, each song. So there was this opportunity at an early age to let these forms of music, jazz and gospel, kind of show me how to be present, how to listen, and how to collaborate and let the song lead the way, and to not have to control it, which I think honestly helped me as an actor too. Because it can be really easy to get in your head as an actor. Acting is like super vulnerable. I mean, singing is really vulnerable too, but I found that I had so much training so early that I could like rely on the training, and that could be like my bag of tricks. I'm like, oh, well, if I just hide behind these like vocal pyrotechnics, like people will give me great applause and I don't have to like worry about like really being naked on stage or whatever, Not that it was always my goal to be as truthful as possible as an actor on stage, but we all have our bag of tricks. It's so vulnerable just to be performing or doing art of any kind, writing. So those 2 experiences were really formative as well. Went to university.
Can I slow you down for a second?
Yeah.
So I want to go back to a couple of things. Like,
yes,
the way you were describing, like you watched this movie when you were 6 years old, you immediately started singing it, and in your mind, you're like, I sound exactly like that. Like, that is not a common experience. It's amazing. It's amazing. But
is
I'm curious,
uncommon?
like, yes. It's not uncommon for I have a 5.5-year-old daughter, so I feel like I can really speak to this right now. It is not uncommon for a young daughter, theoretically speaking, to sing and sing wholeheartedly. But the piece of nuance that was interesting to hear you say is like, in my head, I sounded exactly like that. Like this notion that like I knew I was doing it right. And again, like even if you sounded like a chipmunk, whatever, there was that like internal knowing of like, I'm doing it. Like, where do you think that came from?
Oh my God. That's a really deep question. I just got chills. Yeah, just to reflect on what you said, like I live with an absolutely amazing 8-year-old. She is a superstar. She played the lead at the local kids show,
Oh,
and
cool.
she is an absolute superstar. But I think, well, the first thing that came to mind when you asked me that question is there is this thread, and I'm like currently writing a solo show about this, like the diva's journey. There's this thread of like mimicry, of like hearing and producing, of like outside in for me, that I've always been like a really keen mimic. And the imitation aspect being this way to tap in to different energies. And so like the solo show that I'm writing, because I ended up doing when I graduated school, had a dark night of the soul, was like, I'm never going to perform again, like very, very, very dark. And then booked Forbidden Broadway, which kind of like brought me out like when I kind of re-entered the world. And Forbidden Broadway, for those that don't know, is like the SNL of Broadway. So it's been around for decades and it's like a legacy, and it's kind of it created its own niche. And so there's all these albums of, it's basically the music of the shows that you're parodying to different lyrics, to parody lyrics. And you're doing imitations of all of these Broadway icons that I grew up listening to, like Patti LuPone, Bernadette Peters, and now like a little bit of pop stuff coming into. But
Sure.
for me, the mimicry thing, it was just I was just an audio learner. Like, there's something to me about the act of like listening deeply and letting that internalize. And I will say too that imitating like the divas, like the greatest vocalists of all time, helps me get out of my own way. You're channeling an energy, you're channeling a physical embodiment. Like, because when I'll do these imitations, like it's not 100% accurate. It's like you find it's like a caricature, but it's physicalized. So you find like the main things, like Patti LuPone has a little like, oh, and she's got this like incredible like lifted palette placement. So she's got all this crazy resonance space. So it helped, like I can see the gifts of each diva, of each icon. Celine Dion's got like that little nasality, the French Canadian, and it'll like really help you like hook into the twang so that the sound just flies out of the front of your face and is very focused. So I find, yeah, I think, I don't know if this is why you were asking the question, but there might be some deeper answer there about like different lifetimes, you know, of like coming in and being like, oh, I am, like coming in as a kid and being like, I am.
Yes.
And then losing touch with that as like conditioning in the world kind of gets into your brain.
Right.
But then having to return to it and remember what you knew intuitively as a kid. And just the purity and the joy of it as a kid too. Because I can
For sure.
clearly see as I look back, like this sweet spot, like when I was in 8th grade and played Annie Oakley and Annie Get Your Gun with Music Theater of Connecticut, Kevin Connors, Jim Schilling, the people I was talking about in my early life. And we did it at the Westport Country Playhouse, this incredible venue, this theater that like Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward owned. And being like unself-conscious, like just like confidence, but from a really pure-hearted place. Like I would fall asleep listening to like there's no business like show business, like with gobs of makeup behind your ears, like that. I was like, I would listen to this as I was falling asleep, being like, ah, theater, you know. And then I got to do it, and it was just this like this like blasting, this incredible pure experience. And then as I got into high school, I started to get into my head and started to be like, oh, there's a right way to do this, there's a wrong way to do this. And I think some of that is inevitable as you study craft, because like I'm still very passionate about like continuing to train. And I find that teaching actually helps me like be better and articulate things in a way that I wouldn't have if I hadn't been saying it to someone else. But also trusting what you know, like, and letting, like following the fun and letting the joy of it be the leader of it, like be the driver of the car. And letting the fear be like the kid in the back seat. It's like Elizabeth Gilbert says this in Big Magic. She's like, okay, when I'm about to write a book or write something, like creativity, muse, whatever you want to call it, love, divine, collective, whatever. You're in the front seat driving. I'm making a commitment to you and to this idea that I've received. I'm in the passenger seat, and like fear, I know you're going to be here always. Like I know, like, and it's okay. Like make yourself comfortable, like buckle in, get some snacks, like just know that you're not going to decide where we go. You're not going to touch the radio, like, but I love you and you can, you know, so just kind of letting the fear be there, but also the technique and the craft for me as an actor and a singer. It's like giving that critical cop something to do. Like the technique is like, okay, well, focus on your breath, focus on XYZ, like with acting, it's like focus on your target, you know, put your attention back on your scene partner. Like you give it something to do, and that voice, the critical, like crippling part of it that takes you out of the moment, it has something to do, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
So yeah, I don't know why I thought I sounded exactly like Debbie Reynolds, but I guess I was meant to be a mimic.
No, well, like, but that's what's so fun, right? Like, it's a braid. It's a braid of so many different threads. So one of the braids inevitably is confidence. Like, you had some innate level of confidence at a very young age. Like, cool, clocked. Something about diva energy seems to really resonate with you. Those big voices, those powerful performances. Which again, like you said yourself, you sounded like a chipmunk. But in your body, you're like, but that energy feels right. Like I feel a connection to that energy, even though I'm very, very young. There's learning audibly. Like, I don't know if you have perfect pitch or not, but some people absolutely like they hear
Like
music.
relative
Yeah, and
pitch.
like,
And I can pick out like a couple notes from memory, but not every single note.
not science. Yeah. But again, but the just hearing like sonic information is something you process pretty naturally. So again, like that's another thing. So like all of those converge into like 6-year-old you being like, I can sing like a fucking diva. Of course I can. Watch.
I fucking got this.
Which is amazing. And like the mimic part, I never would have assumed, but it does sound like you, the specific piece that I find really interesting is for you, it's like when I am mimicking something, I'm understanding like literally the physiology of what's happening with the person and the energetic embodiment and that kind of like thread of spiritual truth that again, per Big Magic, amazing book of you like listeners, if you've never read it, so good. Like, but there's a thread of truth to every song, which means that you and all of us in a way can tap into the same root feeling or root connection that the original artist did and find that and then express it in a way. And like, but and again, like between the gospel show, it's like you had this wildly fantastic education of sorts, like before you were 14, which is crazy. That's crazy.
Truly lucky.
Which then it makes me curious. So like, I'm 100% projecting here, but like we find art in youth and it's joy and it's creation and we're allowed to take up space and it's being on stage and it's amazing. And then conditioning plus pursuit of craft equals like self-doubt, self-negativity, self-loathing of sorts, et cetera, et cetera. Like, can you go back to that dark night of the soul? And like, was it a moment that flipped a switch? Was it like a slow erosion? Like kind of what happened?
What happened getting into it or getting out of it?
Both. Like what brought you into it and then what eventually pulled you out of it?
Yeah, you articulated that so well about like the root energy of something that I think all art really is about. It's like, I think that David Byrne also says this, or no, it's not. I can't remember who said it, but it's like a film director that's basically like, I'm not creating these things. I'm like casting out the fishing line and receiving. Like the ideas exist. And again, Elizabeth Gilbert also talks about this. And I think when I think about not to go too far away from your question, because I will go into my gnarly bits.
I trust you.
But the idea of like we're all channels and that like even if AI can create stuff, like I'm just thinking about this like whole AI thing. Like it's not ever going to replace like the human heart, human emotion, love. And the whole point of art to me, and this is something my partner has said, so I don't want to like totally like I am stealing this, but like art is an empathy machine. And the human experience is a really, really unique experience. And I think art is one of the things that comes very close to this intersection of like that which is divine, that which is collective, that which is universal, that which is like true unconditional love, and that which is like the human experience of the lack of that, and I think the dimensionality of the human experience like can't really be reproduced by something like it's about the love for me. So yeah, so picking up the thread of like the mimicry and going into the dark night of the soul, I found that as a kid, like going outside in sometimes can be helpful. Like there's certain acting methods like mask work where it's like really powerful to like in an embodied way, like go outside in. Um, but I also, as like a perfectionist, as a recovering perfectionist, but at that time, like really feeling like I needed the love that I got from everyone around me and the validation and the worthiness was because I was excelling and because I was like, you know, doing well in these external achievement things. And I really didn't understand that the love was that like my worthiness was just already there just because I exist. So the double-edged sword of the mimicry is that if you told me what to do or how to sound, like I did even like session singing and in college, and my whole thing was like, tell me what to do, what genre, what style, I will reproduce it. Like I will give that to you exactly what you want. And even with like directing or like as an actor, it's like just over direct me, just give me all the like, and I didn't trust what I had. I didn't trust what I knew. I didn't, and the mimicry was like, these are all these reference points, but it was like, well, what's my voice? Like, what's my Mia's singing voice and also my artistic voice, like on a grander scale? What's my experience even? What's my truth? Because it was so much just like it's almost like a pathological extrovertedness. And what I've like in the healing of myself through like the pain and the challenges that have arisen, I've learned to become an introvert and learned to like that going within and creating spaciousness around whatever's there is like the best thing that I can do, not only for myself, but for everyone else around me and in the world at large. So yeah, there was this question of like, who really am I? Like, I will work as hard as I have to work to be the best at everything so that everybody loves me and gives me all the awards and the pats on the back and the love. And that's how I'm going to prove that I'm a worthy human being. And like depression and anxiety, I know a lot of us artists can relate. So, sorry, I had a tangent come in and I was like, put the tangent aside. I'm in a story, but I also think this is kind of funny. Yes. So my acting teacher, acting mentor, Patrick Page, really, really brilliant actor. He talks about like the arrogance that it requires to like be an actor. I guess it works for musicians too. It's like, I'm going to stand up here in the light and say these things. And you hundreds, thousands of people are going to sit in the dark and watch me say these things. You know, it's like it takes a lot of balls to be able to do that. And it's interesting too, to me, like how the need, like the prove my worthiness, like love me. Like, I just feel like I've heard a lot of artists talk about that. It's like that being one of the sources of pursuing this thing.
For sure. Can I share something though?
Yeah, please.
I feel like I feel like a part of the artist journey is that you realize that no amount of arrogance and no amount of like that version of self-love would ever come close to this notion of unconditional love or being a channel of truth by miles and miles and miles. And so something that like I'm also going through the journey of like, I was never a huge extrovert, but if you would ask me that question, I would have said, yeah, I'm social. I like to talk to people. I like to connect, blah, 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 blah. Like I'm an introvert 100%. This is very easy. A context that is defined and I'm interacting within is very easy for me. Rooms full of people, nightmare, utter nightmare. But when I'm on stage, because there's an established context, like I'm learning more and more that like performance is a relationship. Like we have very different roles, which in some ways is what makes the best relationships because we're not trying to do the same thing. I'm not asking you to do what I do, and you're not asking me to be a part of the audience. I'm saying I need some energy from you. You need some energy from me. And if we can create those two puzzle pieces that meet, like that's fucking magic. That's what's so good. And so like, I totally understand what your acting teacher said. And let's be clear, plenty of ego to go around in the community of artists. But I think,
but also courage.
For sure. For
I'm
sure.
not like
And
saying that story in totally the negative context, but yeah.
yes. Yes. And it is most beautiful. Like, I mean, art is an empathy machine. Like, it creates connection at a level that certainly right now, I think all of us desperately need. But it's also why it's so integral to the fabric of like what we call society. And like, we could have a much longer conversation about how we have no ability to actually value art appropriately, separate,
Yes.
different. But
Yes.
like, I think that's something I have learned as I've spent more time on stage is like, it's funny. Everything, if you just showed it to an alien, you're like, who do you think is important here? They would point to the person on stage. And it's like, but a performance is really about the audience. Because like
100%.
that roar of applause, like that's that shared experience that all of you are now going through together. And those are the moments you remember more than anything. And so like we're serving each other. We're serving each other. Have you ever been curious about what it would feel like to get on stage for the first time? Or have you been curious about what it feels like to start a podcast or just to go through life as an artist? If any of those questions are of interest to you, I want to let you know I do a newsletter that comes out mostly regularly every couple of weeks, and it's called the Jack Dawkins newsletter. Super orig, I know. But I just kind of document in detail what I'm going through as a performer, as an artist, as I sort of learn and navigate all the different things that I'm doing. And it's my intention not to pitch you on anything, to sell you anything, but just to share my story as it unfurls, and selfishly as a way for me to catalog all these different moments and experiences so that if one day I choose to go back and I want to remember what something felt like, I have this lovely catalog of things that I can look to. So if that's of interest to you, you can sign up in the comments below or in the video description, whichever. And I encourage you to do so. I'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Especially, well, I feel like a music concert situation, music is a really, really powerful thing. And the energy that you can feel, I mean, absolutely 100%, it is a relationship. It's a dynamic that works together in the collective. And that's why I believe it's so powerful, is that it is the collection of beings together in something that the artist is feeding off the audience is feeding off. It's the closed feedback loop.
Yes.
That doesn't exist in a vacuum. The performance doesn't exist in a vacuum. Right. Yes. And even as an actor too, I mean, the audience is a big part of the show. Yeah. Every moment, just, not just holding space and being witness, but I mean, the goal is to serve them, like through the storytelling. The goal is to live truthfully so that someone can experience something that changes them, hopefully in some small way, or a big way. But I believe it's like light work, which is why, all of the self-criticism stuff, which we're about to get into in my story, it's important to keep going just because you never know who you are going to impact. You never know when you share something that you create, who needed to hear that, despite what your brain might tell you about, or your mind, the fear self might say, oh, who wants to hear that? Like, who are you to say, like, who, and this is ongoing for me. This is not I'm not speaking from like the top of the mountain coming down being like, I've surpassed this, this is like a total universal thing. And so it's like, the more you do it too, the more the fear can chill the fuck out. Cause you're like, oh, well, I survived that time when I thought I was too terrified to go out on stage or to share this thing that I wrote, or, you move through the circle of fire and you're like, oh, I'm alive. Okay. Then your nervous system resets, your whole being is like, oh, okay, I did that. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be terrified the next time, but it's a reference point. So yeah. Okay. So graduated, I was feeling like a lot of levels of burnout. And so for me, like, rest is a really deeply important thing. Like, if I'm like, one of the things that I was thinking about for like, what would I advise people, or what would I say to myself like 20 years ago, 10 years ago? is like give yourself space
Mm.
and time, spaciousness, be gentle, rest. Like this whole hustle culture thing, it's not where it's at as far as being an artist. Not to say that like commitment and like, I don't regret any of my training, I don't regret hard work that I've done, but I don't need to glorify the efforting and the striving and the hard work at the expense
Yes.
of my wholeness and my health as a person, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of it.
Yes.
I can't give from an empty well, truly. So yes, so I was doing some pretty deep spiritual seeking at this time, early 20s, and I was like always exposed to some heady shit early on. I was also very lucky to be like, raised essentially also by this like Quaker meeting, this like group of like basically like neo hippies, essentially like conscientious objectors, pacifists, meditators, Sufis, yogis, like just deeply spiritual people on a deep spiritual path.
Yeah.
And I was around them as a child, 5, 6, 7, all the way through like, college. They would come see me in my shows. This is my spiritual family. And I would have these like mystical experiences growing up that I would like go to these women and be like, I feel like I was feeling all this energy from trees and I felt love from nature. And they were like, yes, that is real. Like they were able to be like, that's real. Not like, you're a freaking crazy person.
Yes.
So that was amazing. I read Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh and Eckhart Tolle, like, all that stuff in high school, and was journaling a lot,
Wow.
meditating, imagery, visualization. Like my whole research paper in AP English was about like mind body healing, visualization. Because my dad's a psychologist, so he already had all that research. So a lot about how my mind and my thoughts, like where your attention goes, energy flows, what you think about grows, all that shit. So I was kind of working with some of that stuff, even like the manifesting, even in like college auditions and, early stuff. And then I was kind of going deeper. I had depression, like bouts of clinical depression and anxiety that were pretty bad. Starting in high school, started seeing a therapist in high school. And into college, began going on antidepressants in college because I was like crippled, like antidepressants and also some anti-anxiety stuff, like crippled by depression and anxiety, in conservatory, like my junior year, particularly. And I think there was also a level of burnout there as well. Like I did freshman year, you're working really hard, you're dancing really hard, you're always going. And then doing summer stock, which is like 100-hour work weeks. You're putting up 10 main stage shows over the course of 2 months, and you're rehearsing a show during the day, performing a main stage show at night, performing in a cabaret after that main stage show, rinse and repeat all summer long. So and I did that both summers, like freshman year summer, sophomore year summer. And so by the time I was a junior, I was like crispy. So that's when my like mental health journey, like I was like, I got to pay attention to this. And graduating, it kind of intensified as I was pursuing. I did a lot of yoga in college, like just your straight up like vinyasa, hatha, iyengar, whatever. I was really enjoying that. Started getting into like plant medicine stuff. And then I discovered Kundalini yoga and was going very deep in that, and very like as a self-identified addict. I was using these spiritual things, like almost pursuing them like a drug, like a high. Like I was feeling like the ecstasy, like ecstatic bliss, ecstatic divine bliss by like going deep into these like very effort-based practices of like breathing and kriyas and like going. And I was like having out-of-body experiences. I was like really like the first Kundalini yoga class I took, I like left my body, and the teacher was like, yeah, don't do this at home for a bit. He's like, you can fly. You got to be cautious. Like this amazing teacher who like really was an incredible guide for me. His name's Kelly Owen. Um, and so, but I was still like in my 20s, like I'm invincible. And there was like a lot of my ego coming up too, of like feeling into my like divine power and feeling like, oh, like I'm it, you know, like I'm the coming of the female messiah. Like, you know, it was just a very like entangled, like genuine experiencing my own divinity, my own power as like a being, but also the ego entangling in that.
Yes.
And having to like face that down and be humbled by life and humbled by suffering and pain. So I, Dark Night of the Soul. So I had this like Kundalini awakening, basically this almost like forced awakening in a way. And like what goes up must come down. I remember I was in a Kundalini yoga retreat on December 21st, 2012, end of the Mayan calendar in Costa Rica. And like on the way in there, like as I'm doing these practices and projecting my astral plane, I know this is getting so far into woo-woo land, but I know you're here for it. So, like I also had this video that went viral at that same time. And I would go into a deep, like meditative state, breath work, all that shit. And then I'd go home to my apartment 2 blocks away and I'd be like, oh, my video has 200,000 more hits and just hit the top of Reddit again. And I was actively projecting my energy out into the universe. Like it was like I knew that it was connected. Like I knew the veil was thin. And so I was really feeling into like my power. And the night before flying to Costa Rica for this retreat, I got a call from like Good Morning America at 6 a.m. being like, we want you on the pop segment. And I was like puking the whole night before because like a lot of this deep energetic work, it was probably also my liver detoxifying a little bit. But I was purging like old energy because I was like again, pursuing this in a forceful way, in a way that like I wasn't taking breaks. I was doing it like every day for 6 months. And it's a very intense energy practices. These are like ancient practices. And so, yeah. So went on national television. That's a whole other story. And then was like in Costa Rica and then at the end of the Mayan calendar, which a lot of people were like, is this the end of the world? Not people at the retreat, but just in general. But I knew it was like, or I felt that it was like the end of what's written, like that this was like a shift. This was like going into the Aquarian age. It's like, it's up to us now. Like, you know, the seers and the rishis and all the, like the Mayan seers are like, this is what they've seen up to this point. Now it's up to us. So I really wanted to be like in a sacred place on the grid as like a spiritual warrior. Like I wanted to be like an agent of positive healing for like the higher good of all. And we had this like epic ceremony. I can't believe I'm getting into all this in this podcast about theater, but about music. But I said like my intention, we like threw these intentions into the fire of stuff we want to let go of. And you could say it out loud or not. And I just was like, okay, God, universe, like take away everything that keeps me from you. Just take it all. And I, very soon after I came home and began to deal with my relationship to substances, quit smoking weed for the first time, very quickly was confronted with like a lot of stuff that was falling away. And again, some of it was like stuff that I didn't think was bad, but a lot of it was like what I thought I was, like forms of my identity is like, oh, I am a daughter, I am a singer, I am a performer, I am a this, I am a that. Like all those, it was like, no, you're not those things. Like, and it was a very scary time because I didn't know, like I felt like I was a shell of like who I once was, like everything that I had like security in, my reality, who I am, like that all just was like ripped away very quickly. And I was in a state of like pure terror for about like 9 months. And like really had to pull off the grid. And I had luckily a lot of support, therapists, psychiatrists, a family of psychologists. Also an amazing healer named Rosa Haritos. She's a shamanic healer and a medium. And I had been working with her. So I continued to work with her and do shamanic work with her. Did like a soul retrieval, like really allowed myself to fall apart, and was granted, like, had the privilege of being able to fall apart with the support of my family. And it was horrible and terrifying, and I wanted to die every day. And slowly came back into life just because I was like, I'm atrophying. Like, I went to an intensive outpatient program to just like really get more support with like the anxiety and the depression. And eventually my insurance ran out, and I was like, I can't go back to like living with my parents. Cause I had moved back home for a little bit to kind of like become okay. And, I was like, I guess I got to get a job again. I guess I got to go back to like being a member of society, cause money, and also it's going to be the only way out. It's like through. So I like got a job, waiting tables again with some friends from school, and I was still just a mess. But just being in life made me feel better, and like sharing a little bit with like the people I felt safe with, and then being like, I'm a mess too. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. Just starting to realize that like the whole perfectionist, like the paradigms had just fallen away. And I was able to like kind of rediscover like the purity of my love for art. And even though I was still very terrified, didn't want to be like seen, didn't want to sing, like this whole area, this chakra was shut down. I had a roommate at the time, Joe Chisholm, God bless him, from school, who basically kind of also was like, hey, like the depth of the pain that you've experienced is something that like many actors would want to have, because it's giving you this like depth of experience as a human being. Like this is good. Like you can use this shit. And he also like gave me the little like gentle nudge. She's like, we're performing together in this concert. Cause I was still at a point where I was like, no way, no way, no way, no way. And we did. And it was another like moving through the fire moment and being like, oh my God, wow. Like the worst thing that I had to fear was my own fear. Like, even if I crashed and burned, like it was fine. But like, I really like, I was so shut down. I was taking with an amazing teacher, Maggie Heilweil, who was like this incredibly loving presence for me as a teacher, who inspires me as a teacher now to like create a safe space. I saw her earlier that day and was like, I can't sing this shit. And like, because it's very psychological, like it's like sports psychology. Like if you're not in your body and you're freaked out and you're tense, like it's not going to come out. But it was like the support of my roommate, Joe, my friend Joe, who really helped me in that moment of like singing opposite each other in this like duet. It was Suddenly Seymour from Little Shop. So it was very meta, like so cheesy, but also like, he was like, it's okay. Amazing. Like you can be a mess. I fucking got you. I'm going to cry thinking about it. And I needed that. Like little kick in the butt. And so then kind of from there, I, again, like re-entering life was like, oh yeah, like starting to see each time I fell into a depression too, even in college, once I realized that it just made me more human, and that served me as an artist, and that served like the characters I was playing, that I didn't need to blot this experience away. I didn't need to cognitive behavioral therapy it away, that I could be with what was trying to come up, that these depressions, which usually lasted about 9 months, which I think is interesting as like a gestational period of like a rebirth of self. They had gifts for me. It was like my body being like, hey girl, like you have to be with this stuff. And that's how I can have more empathy for myself, for others. I can be a better human being because of this stuff. But if I keep running from it, it's going to be gnarly. So facing it, being with it, sometimes we run until we're forced to be with it, and that's okay. That's It's life.
That's also
But,
human. Like,
Yes,
it's a
100%.
deeply human
100%.
experience.
But I felt like the dark night of the soul was a cracking open that was necessary, that now I have this reference point of like in my meditation practice, like I still practice yoga, but I have a much gentler meditation practice and journey there that now is like there's less fear around the stuff that arises and because it's actually joyful because I can be with the part of myself that's been previously exiled and that stuff can come up to be released.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
long story long. I know we have 4 minutes left. I'm sorry.
No, it's beautiful. I was gonna say like we'll probably need a part 2 because I feel like we're just getting to the mouth of like where your career blossomed, which is beautiful. No, it's funny. I mean, universe, whatever. I had a plant medicine experience last December, and one of the biggest like sort of downloads I got was like the world is divided into 2 types of people: those who are feeling pain and taking it out of the system, and those who are avoiding it and deflecting it back into the world. And every day you make a choice of which side you're on. And it's not about getting it right or wrong. It's just about honoring which one you are in a moment, and then choosing the actions that you need to take based on how you feel about that. And so like, ideally we would all be sitting with our pain and discomfort and taking it out of the system and making the world more peaceful and beautiful, but we're fucking human and we're messy. So that doesn't always happen.
Right. And it's not a binary either, you know?
No.
It's like,
No.
in your own journey, there's a time to take it easy and distract, and there's a time to dive in, like as guided by your own system.
Yes. 1,000%. Okay. Well, we're definitely going to need a part 2 because I feel like we have barely
I'm so
scratched
down
the
for that.
surface.
I want to learn more about you too. I feel like this is all too much me talking about myself.
Sort of the nature of the podcast, but I really appreciate that, and I'd be happy to share. But yeah,
because your insights as you come in have been wonderful. So yeah, I would definitely love to keep talking.
Thank you very much. You and I will get that scheduled. That would be beautiful. In the interim, before we get to record a part 2, when part 1 comes out, where can people find you?
Yes. My website is www.themiagentile.com. And my Instagram is at themiagentile.com. So the Mia Gentile domains, they've just been taken, honey. So it's at THE.
On Instagram, is there a .com?
No, the handle just is at the, so at THEMIAGENTILE.
Perfect.
That's my Instagram handle. It's also my TikTok handle, although I'm not on there very much. What else? Yeah, and on my Instagram and my website, there's a link, a Calendly link for like a free 20-minute consult if you are interested in taking voice or having coaching. I can talk about more of this in part 2 about like the kind of teacher that I am and what I focus on and my approach. Cool. But you can always sign up for like a free 20-minute get to know me consult for anything like that if you're looking for coaching, vocal technique, acting, etc.
Amazing. That's beautiful. This was a joy. It went not at all how I thought it would go, which is my favorite kind of interview ever.
We went deep, Jack.
We went deep. We went in, which I love. I fucking love.
I feel like it was your space also. Like your energy was like kind of inviting the depth of it. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Listeners, stay tuned. There will be a part 2. But for now, Mia, thank you so much for sharing your time. This was a joy.
Thank you.
Do you know anyone who you think would make a great guest on this podcast? The good news is there's almost no qualification. They need to be a human and they need to make art. I'm not particularly concerned if they make art for 100,000 people or for no people and they're still doing it in their home. This podcast is all about telling the stories of artists and how their craft has evolved over time, how they perform in their own unique way. So if you have a friend that you love listening to, if you have someone who you think has a really interesting story, I would so love to talk to them. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for watching Stage Dive again. My name is Jack Dawkins. It was a pleasure to have you here. Before I sign off, I do want to thank Kalisa Mickle and Holly Johnson for being the hearts, the guts, the brains behind the operations that make this entire podcast possible. They work so hard to continue to improve it and put it in front of more people and allow it to continue to live on. So thank you to them, thank you to our guest, and thank you to you for watching. I appreciate you.